Welcome, Mayor, Council, Budget Committee members. My name is Mike Caven. I'm the Fire Chief of Eugene Springfield Fire. Eugene Springfield Fire is a shared service between the cities of Eugene and Springfield, a service and partnership that's been in place since 2010. It's my pleasure today to present to you the proposed budget pages for fire and life safety services within the city of Springfield. Here you'll see a map of Eugene Springfield Fire's service territory, covering over 1,700 square miles and over 300 citizens in Lane County, primarily residing in the cities of Eugene and Springfield. Eugene Springfield Fire deploys out of 16 fire stations strategically located throughout our service territory, providing an all-hazard service including fire suppression, fire prevention, EMS, ambulance transport, hazardous materials response, confined space rescue, water rescue, aircraft rescue and firefighting, and various array of support services. Within the city of Springfield, Eugene Springfield Fire deploys out of 5 strategically located fire stations serving the city limits, Rainbow Water District, Willett-Kinsey Fire District, and the Glenwood Water District. Response services account for the overwhelming majority of work performed by Eugene Springfield Fire staff, whether responding to or supporting emergencies within our communities. In FY24, emergency medical services accounted for 87% or 42,000 calls for service. To meet that need, Eugene Springfield Fire deploys fire engines for first response, EMS work, and ambulances to transport the sick and injured to the hospital. Within the city of Springfield, we staff 3 24-hour advanced life support ambulances and 1 12-hour basic life support ambulance. Across the metro area, our ambulances are supplemented by 2 private ambulances whose primary responsibility is to provide non-emergency inter-facility transport. For fire protection services and first response EMS, within the city of Eugene, ESF deploys 4 3-person fire engines, 1 3-person aerial or ladder truck, and of those 4 fire engines, 2 of them cross-staff a brush engine and a water tender to supplement wildfire and rural unhydrated fire response. In FY24, these fire responses accounted for just under 9% or over 4,000 calls for service. Typical non-fire service response work includes hazardous materials, technical rescue, water rescue, airport rescue, and other public assistance and non-emergency responses. Here's a snapshot of the 2024 calls for service. There were nearly 48,000 individual calls for Eugene Springfield Fire and EMS crews, nearly 100,000 individual unit responses. Of these calls, over 23,000 people required transport to local hospitals. There are 259 working apartment or house fires, almost 700 grass, brush, or wildfires. Our highest daily total call volume was 316 calls for service. The 5-year trending pattern shows us an increase in incidents of 22%, responses a 7% increase, and our total time on task or time on scene caring for our community of 8%. Later in this presentation, we'll be discussing some response initiatives to address call volume at Eugene Springfield Fire. This slide is a reflection of unit responses over the years. From what we have seen is a steady increase that's averaged about 5% growth year over year, with the anomaly in 2020 and 2021 being COVID-related decrease in call volume. To tackle this ever-rising demand for service, Eugene Springfield Fire has launched new initiatives to address resource deployment to protect our most valuable assets and put the right resources on the right calls. As you'd see in this slide, our efforts year over year stabilized and have began to decrease the number of units responding to calls for service across our cities. Here you'll find a snapshot of the FY26 requirements and resources for Eugene Springfield Fire. The grand total increase is about $28,000 with some significant adjustments within funds. Personnel services is up roughly $600,000 to address cost of living and other employee-related expenses. Materials and services is increased roughly $1 million to address inflationary impacts on goods and services. And 3 positions that moved from personnel services to materials and services as they are now employed within the City of Eugene and are listed as a contract for service. Capital outlay saw the biggest decrease of about $1.5 million. This is a result of investments in FY23, 24, and 25 to replace aging fire apparatus and ambulances. To help address these requirements, the general fund has increased $1 million. The special revenue fund expired in FY25. The building code fund increases slightly to address employment increases. This is where fire marshal services are partially funded. The fire local option levy has a slight decrease. The ambulance fund increases about $900,000. The decrease in FY25 was partially related to uncertainty around ground emergency medical transport services, payments from Medicaid. We will continue to watch that program as uncertainty around payments within these programs continues to plague ambulance service providers across Oregon. And then our vehicle and equipment fund proportionally decreases with capital outlay addressing those investments in previous years. Overall, ESF's total FY26 proposed budget is $89 million. Springfield Fire and Life Safety accounts for 28.4% of that total budget. Here's a quick snapshot of Eugene Springfield Fire's organizational chart within the City of Springfield. The positions or high-level positions noted on this in blue are positions that are funded by the City of Eugene. Overall, we see a 1 position decrease from FY25 to FY26, and that is the elimination of the recently added Public Information Officer position. More will be addressed in the service level discussion in a future slide. This slide is an additional snapshot of the overall organizational chart for Eugene Springfield Fire and its 4 prominent divisions providing fire and rescue services, emergency medical services, community risk reduction through the Fire Marshal's Office, and administrative and support services through our Administrative Bureau. Here you'll find some of our high-level accomplishments in FY25. The department onboarded 59 new employees, including 15 firefighters, 20 single-role emergency medical technicians and paramedics, and 24 basic life support employees. In wildfire, we deployed to 10 separate wildfire conflagrations, most of which were throughout Oregon. We invoiced Oregon State Fire Marshal over $206,000 for Springfield's portion. And our largest wildfire response was to the city of Los Angeles during the unprecedented firestorm in January. It's important to note when we talk about wildfire and particularly conflagration response that these costs are paid in full by the sponsoring agency, most of which are within the state of Oregon. So the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office provides the funding for these responses. And through Emergency Mutual Aid Compact, the state of California is able to repay the state of Oregon for conflagration response. This means that all costs related to overtime during the response, overtime to cover vacancies back at home, and the utilization of equipment is fully funded. It is the payments for utilization of our equipment that we use to purchase much needed wildfire tools and equipment. It is a good program for our employees, their experience, and the program as a whole. Data management saw advancements in FY25, including the deployment of the Dark Horse platform, which is in real-time data analytics utilizing our own response resources, our own response information over the last several years to not only measure deployment, but predict where future needs, station locations, and response changes may be needed. This allows for real-time decision-making, and allows command staff to be more informed about ESF's response planning and execution. Other FY25 accomplishments and special events included continuing the ambulance system redesign, upgrades to facilities within the city of Springfield, including landscaping, roof, and other critical repairs, and our fleet replacement efforts. Initiatives in FY26 are to continue the work on our department's vision, mission, values, and guiding documents to prepare the organization for an update of our standards of cover and strategic plan. A standards of cover document is the tool where we list the community's expectations with the fire department's capabilities, measure them, and inform future investments and needs within a strategic plan. Our ambulance transport redesign will continue, and we look to complete this transition to a single role ambulance system that improves workforce availability and overall cost to deliver ambulance transport in our area. Participation in the Lane County Ambulance Task Force to address long-term financial health of ambulance service within both cities and Lane County. Service level adjustments in FY26 intend to leverage data and experience, making adjustments to response packages to align with the need, improving system reliability. If you will recall the slide earlier that addressed unit responses and the decrease year over year, we started down this path in September of FY25 with a goal to reduce over 10,000 unnecessary fire engine deployments across our jurisdiction for calls that do not require multiple personnel and are a lower acuity medical response. This is done through data, intuition, and experience of our response crews and management staff with an eye on customer service and the safety of our crews. We also plan to actively manage the potential for a temporary service level reduction at a neighborhood fire station and the elimination of the wildfire planning and fuels management program that was tied to the PIO investment from FY25. Fire station resilience work continues with Department of Public Works Operations, Finance, and Emergency Management to evaluate our stations and apply for seismic grants to bring 4 or 5 stations into modern seismic compliance. When we think about our future considerations, front of mind is addressing the increase of call volume and population growth with an aging population. Whereas you will see in our performance measures that calls have held relatively flat as our community grows and our unit responses have gone down. That is through active management of deployment of resources for certain call types that don't warrant a response from the fire department, and addressing the unit level response or over-resourcing of certain call types. This doesn't mean, as call volumes flatten out, that we aren't seeing an increase in calls for service. Rather, we're addressing prioritization and scope of work to avoid the impacts of mission creep on unit reliability for the most critical calls for service. We will continue working on station remodels and upgrades to ensure that our stations are well positioned and prepared to serve Springfield today and into the future in the most efficient and safe way possible. We will continue to keep an eye out on ambulance fund reserves, a distressed fund, which, due to increasing costs and decreasing reimbursement through federal programs and reliance on supplemental federal assistance in healthcare, continue to put strain on the system. New revenues or an alternative way to deliver the service will need to be addressed in the near future to limit the impact on the general fund for this enterprise service. ESF's governance model continues to be front of mind as counselors from both cities work to understand information provided in a recent governance report and determine the best outcome to deliver the highest level of service to our communities in a way that makes the most sense. We'll continue to look for alternative service delivery models. In recent years, Eugene Springfield Fire has been able to leverage grant funding to test scenarios related to alternative response and alternative transport to destinations other than the ER. And we will continue to keep an eye out on future growth, planning for resources, and acquisition for land for new fire stations. Front of mind is planning for the investment and eventual development of the Glenwood area and the South Bob Straub Parkway area, ensuring that those residents and those communities receive the highest level of service from Eugene Springfield Fire. This concludes the Eugene Springfield Fire FY26 budget presentation. I want to thank you all for your service, whether as an elected official or an appointed budget committee member from the community, for the time and effort you invest to ensure that we have the adequate resources to continue to provide service to our communities. Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Myself and/or my staff will be happy to help you understand more about this vital service.